Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Lesley Gold to Through Their Eyes. So hello, Lesley. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, David. How are you?
Good. I'm very good. Thank you very much. And we're going to obviously have a lovely conversation with regards to Lesleys career, what she's learned along the way, what's gone well, what hasn't perhaps gone so well, great advice she's been given, and what advice would she give others at the moment. And also, what's always important is, how does Lesley see the future in terms of future-proofing herself and her career and her development? So if we can start off with the first question, if you could just perhaps give us a little bit of an overview of your career to date.
Yeah, thank you, David. Post-tertiary education, I actually joined a training company where I spent about 5 years developing and delivering bespoke training courses. I then decided to spread my wings and sort of broaden my career into a greater HR remit, and eventually reached the level of Human Resources Director for 2 organizations within a large South African conglomerate. However, I'd always set my sights on an international HR role where I could actually bring together my love of HR, OD, change, and my love of travel. I was promoted to the position of Human Resources Director and part of the executive committee here in the UK for a very large technology company. The best thing I ever did, and that was over 20 years ago. However, ultimately living out of a suitcase and consistently being jet lagged, it begins to pall, and I decided to focus on the HR elements that really light my fire, which is mergers and acquisitions, outsourcing, 2P, right from the feasibility studies, the bid process, through to the integration or separation of employees. And that's what I did for another large American organization with a European role, with European focus. Did that for a number of years. And then in 2016, I decided to start my own consultancy, HR consultancy, which looks at what I've just said, you know, the focus on the mergers, acquisitions, change and transformation. And it also gave me a greater range of clients as well as projects, and fantastically interesting projects. And then COVID came along, and that sort of put a spoke in the wheel for a little while. But I do believe that we will come out of this and there will be projects. Maybe not as large as I've actually had over the last few years, but certainly enough to keep me going and keep my hand in.
Yeah, okay. And we'll come and talk about those towards the end, but if we could just go back a little bit in terms of your career, what has learning or continuous learning meant to you? You obviously, because you had aspirations, were very conscious of it.
Well, as far as self-development is concerned, is definitely have a plan and work towards that. So constant learning, new challenges, seeking out the opportunities, looking at new industries, new people, and not turning your back on too many things. However, being conscious that don't make a leap into something that doesn't progress you in your career.
Yeah, yeah. And anything you wish you'd have known at the start of your career?
Do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Don't be influenced by what other people think that you should be doing. And most importantly, don't follow an older sibling into their career.
Yes, yeah. No one's actually mentioned that, but that's very wise, because sometimes people do and they're just not suited for it.
Oh boy, David, I was still at school when my sister became cabin crew for South African Airways, and she traveled the world. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do when I finish uni. The problem is I suffer from vertigo, and I can't even, watching a movie, and if there's a train or anything like that, I start feeling nauseous just by the vague movement. I even got through the interviews and the initial training, and then I thought, what are you doing? This is never going to work. So I had to back out of that.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes sort of quite a brave person to start a career and then go, no, this isn't for me, because you feel that you have to keep doing it. And yeah, it's not until later life you think, well, why did I do that? And we just sometimes fall into careers. So what's the best piece of advice you've been given along the way?
I'm going to answer that in two parts. Firstly, in my life in general, be the best that you can be, no matter what that is. You can be the best hairdresser, the best shoe shine chap, the best cleaning lady. And don't try and impress other people. And then from a career point of view, be a lifelong learner, and have a plan, and know that things will come along to knock the plan off course, but that's just the way life is. And get the plan back on track when whatever it is, when adversity stymies you for a while. Yeah.
And so what have you enjoyed the most in terms of your career? What have, when you look back and, or if you've gone, yeah, I really enjoyed that, that was really good, I'm really pleased I did that?
I accepted a promotion here to the UK, and it was well over 20 years ago now, and it was the best thing I actually ever did. But I then joined a telecoms company, which was a privately owned organization, and it was like being part of a family. Even though there were 800 of us spread across Europe, it was like being part of a family. We all pulled together, we all absolutely had fun and loved what we were doing. But the 2008-2009 financial collapse sort of had a really bad influence on the organization. And I had to sort of keep myself positive in the face of what I knew was coming. And that was that we were likely to go into administration. I went to the CEO and suggested to him that we probably needed to ask people to go on to a 4-day week, even though it wouldn't save us, it would buy us time to find a purchaser or finance or whatever the case may be. And that entire process was almost like an MBA on the hoof, learning how to sort of keep people motivated, being able to sort of come up with suggestions, and also keeping people buoyant. But it broke my heart when ultimately the company did fold.
Yeah.
But you learn from that. It's out of adversity, the right things come along.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And obviously I've got lots of contacts in the HR world and people and managers and directors, and they quite often say exactly that. Whilst it wasn't a pleasant time in terms of what other people were going through, you actually learn loads. It's if you've got an HR advisor or an HR manager, and they've got to come in and deal with some really nasty and difficult disciplinaries, so I think, well, that's good. And they look at me and go, why? I says, well, think what you're going to learn. Because if you can cope with that one, you can cope with anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Really, really quite important. So that's what you enjoyed. I mean, this actually may be a similar answer. What would you say has been your biggest challenge or challenges?
I suppose accepting a promotion when I had elderly parents, one of whom had cancer and the other one had dementia, and I actually had to make that choice about when do I leave. But ultimately, we all had British passports, and I actually had to say to my sister and my parents, I have to go and carry on, find a house, and ultimately, they would follow me. My career was the most important thing in my life, but obviously my family was as well. And I came over, set up home, had a career, and sadly 3 months later my mother passed away, and then a couple of 6 months after that my sister and my dad came to live with me. So looking after somebody here while having a career that meant that I was traveling extensively was tough. But again, it was something that I actually learned from, and I think it made me a better person. and certainly I was pleased to have him under my roof, because he would never have coped in a home or anything like that. You know, it was important that he was a very shy, introverted man, and he would never have coped in another environment. So it was best for us all. And there again, you know, you make the best of what you've got, and it worked out very well for me.
Yeah, and there's some of life's toughest decisions, aren't they? And at the time, am I doing the right thing? And you know, sometimes there's no right answer, is there?
No, exactly.
So that's wonderful in terms of what you've been doing in the past or whatever. So what about sort of the future in terms of continuing self-development and future-proof yourself and deal with the current market situation?
Well, I have been attending webinars just about every day in the last couple of months. And it's covered various topics, such the employment law changes, because as you can imagine, you know, people being on furlough, when do you bring them back? How do you bring them back? People who have actually said not until there is a cure for this sort of thing, I'm not coming back. And you know, people cannot be made redundant or cannot be fired for refusing to go into an office, and the whole sort of security elements of that. So I've attended those webinars. I've attended one last week on distributed organizations, and this was an organization who had this model of not having people in an office, even before COVID, which was fascinating, as well as distance management and focus management, which is something I needed to do, you know, sort of not constantly looking at your phone to see what emails have come in, and having set times for that. So that was fantastic learning for me. And then, of course, I also attended Future Proofing myself. End of ad.
Thank you. Yeah. And so do you see that, organisations are starting to make some decisions and move forward?
Well, from my learning that I'm getting virtually on a weekly basis now, or a daily basis over the last few weeks, I have had friends and friends of friends and acquaintances of friends who are actually going through things like this. They've been elected representatives for their colleagues because the entire organization has been put at risk of redundancy and furlough and all that sort of thing. So I get phone calls on a daily basis from people saying, this is what my company is doing. Is that right? And yes, everybody's got to follow the legal process. I had a call yesterday to say, it's taking too long. I said, well, how long is the process? Well, it's only been a week. I said, well, there are another 3 to go, basically. They have to follow a process. But that's the way it's done. And you need to feel comfortable knowing that they are actually doing it correctly.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's obviously very important. But there again, for people that are affected, as we all are, it sort of feels very uncertain. And what is certain, there's no uncertainty at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, my heart goes out to people who have been furloughed, and then I'm back at work, and then a day later they're told, well, actually your job is up for redundancy. And I keep saying to people, you know, I've been made redundant. I said, no, you haven't. Your job's been made redundant. No human being can be made redundant. And you're trying to get them to think positively about who they are. And the fact that, yes, you may have to. And in fact, I might even have to re-look at my career and decide what I am going to do in the future. I certainly hope not, because I'm not looking to retire anytime soon. But yeah, you know, as we spoke the other day, one has no idea what's going to really happen. So it's very important to start that plan again as to, if this happens, what else do I do? Yeah,
brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I mean, what I think people can take away from this, if they're watching this on the YouTube channel or going to be listening to it on the podcast, is your positivity. You seem to have bundles of positivity in sort of looking to the future and making things happen. And I think your story tells us that as well, and sort of your style in dealing with things is you seem very calm and have that positivity, which I think is a great trait to have in people. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. And yeah, catching up when we can perhaps meet up for coffee and have a proper conversation rather than looking at screens. So Lesley, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David.
Okay,
Be well.
thank you.